Now, Infinite Tuesday is the first book I ever got published. Random House, Crown published it. I met there. We got okay, yay! Random House, Crown published it. My editor that I met there, I think, I fell in love with him, which I guess all writers do with their editors. I don't know, maybe you're supposed to fight with them, but this guy taught me how to write. And he taught me what I needed to do. And I began to feed stuff to him, and he said, that thing about Rio that you write in the book is a great piece. And now I'm going to read it to you.
Cool.
And you can decide whether he was full of it or whether he had it. But remember that this is part of a moment of me standing in a record company building in London, in the UK, with Chris Blackwell, who says, we could maybe do something with that. Chris said he liked Rio, thought it was a good record, and that it might actually sell some copies. And then he asked a question that set me and the entire record industry in a new direction that would forever change the way music was received and embraced. He wondered if I would make a promotional clip for Rio that he could use to promote it in London and Europe. I had no idea what a promotional clip was, but I sensed an artisanal approach at work in Chris's request that made me agree to produce one without hesitation. I would do the research to get some understanding of what a promotional clip was when I went back home to Monterey. Unlike in the US, all television in Europe was state-owned at the time, so only a few government-controlled stations provided all the television programming in each country. As a result, anyone in those countries who watched television watched those one or two channels, and typically, the programming contained an hour or so a day of music. The music usually consisted of the pop tunes of the time and territory, and the visual component was a short film of the band or performer singing the song as they looked directly into the television camera. The short film was called a promotional clip, a promo clip, or just a clip. It was an odd way to deliver pop music. When Italian television was playing a clip of a British act, it would be disconnected from the rest of Italian television's regular programming day, offering only a blurry look at an international landscape, but it worked. Probably since it was the only television program anyone could watch, and the promo clips sold a lot of records. I didn't find all this out at once. Various execs at Island told me that that all I needed was to make a film of me performing Rio. In their mind, that meant me standing in front of a camera, singing along with the record. However, in my mind, the assignment triggered a remembrance of scenes of every Hollywood musical I'd ever seen, from Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, dance numbers to Disney musicals and Fantasia explorations, all the way up to and including A Hard Day's Night and some of the Monkees episodes. I wrote out a kind of shooting script for Rio and Navajo Trail that consisted of a sequence of scenes I thought would be good visual components for both songs. They were the text equivalents of what I wanted to see. Women in fruit hats dance by, Nez suns himself on the beach, Nez flies through space, Nez sings into old-timey Mike, Nez dances by with woman in red dress, Nez rides up on a white horse. The aesthetic came together around a little more than dreaming up what I wanted to see as the song played. The same way I thought about what I wanted to read while the prison played. Then I called Bill Deere, with whom I had remained in friendly contact, and asked if he would be able to come help me film this. I told him I could pay him a little something, and he said yes. With her background in TV commercials, Catherine, my wife at the time, instinctively knew what would need to be done to bring together a crew for a production. Although she had no direct experience in doing it, she agreed to explore how we might pull this off and started working with Bill to produce a budget. Island Records had no allowances for this. The clips were expected to be produced by the artist or their management and were usually done so quickly and cheaply that the cost was no factor. No one seemed to care much whether they contained any content other than the visual of someone singing the song. I had a very different idea. And as Catherine, Bill, and I began to sweep things together into a pile to see and understand that idea and how we might execute it, we each found a place to apply our particular skills. A new band came to life in my life. Like everyone, we didn't know we were a band until we started playing together. At this stage, it was just Bill with camera equipment. He was willing to contribute to the mix and who could shoot, direct, and edit. Catherine, who had a production skills and she could lend, and me. I would write and perform. It was a good, balanced fit for all of us. The band would emerge. Bill wondered at first how the scenes would fit together, and it took some effort for us to understand each other. Bill was concerned about continuity, and I didn't know what continuity was. Continuity has to do with the way independent shots, filmed at different times, are made to stitch together to create a whole, so that a door opens the correct way in both shots to make it appear as if they are a contiguous part of the same scene. As you can imagine, continuity is a big deal to a filmmaker. What do you think about that, kid? Where did he go?
He's right there. Right there.
Was he right in front?
Yeah.
Okay. Listen up, because you're going to need this.
Stage vacant. Oh, here he comes under the table.
Cats in boxes. Listen, we're all pulling for you, kid. You're welcome under the table.
Over there.
On your lap.
That's funny.
Oh, what a beauty. Black and white. So, continuity. Is a big deal to a filmmaker.
Oh, that was great.
As Bill tried to explain to me what this was, and I tried to explain to him what I saw in my head, we pretty much just talked past each other for a while. We never argued, but it was hard for us to get on the same page, as it were. Nevertheless, we had many happy dinners and conversations because we laughed a lot. Bill was a hardcore Monkees fan, and he had a good sense of humor himself, and together the three of us threw ourselves into the production with at least goodwill and high hopes. It didn't make much difference to me, or perhaps to any of us, that while we were all good at what we did, none of us knew what we were doing collectively. A lot of this would have to be improvised. BMI, a performing rights organization, had been collecting money for songs I'd written whenever they were played on the radio. After Catherine did the budget, I was able to get enough of an advance from BMI to pay for the production of the Rio clip, as well as for a clip for Navajo Trail, which was also on the album. Or so I thought. I could get enough money. The budget was $25,000. This was considered astronomical at the time. The Stand and Sing promo clips were usually a few $100s to produce, if they were made at all. On the first day of shooting, it became pretty clear that we were not going to hit what we were swinging at. We had way overestimated how much we could shoot in a day and also underestimated how much it would cost. The images Bill were shooting were superb, and his crew was hanging together under Catherine's management, but we weren't getting as much footage as we thought we would. And we finally ran out of time, with only about half of what I had written making it to film. Some of it was footage for Rio, some of it was for Navajo Trail. We were using the standard technique of shooting to playback, which meant the record was played while we shot film, and I would lip sync along to the recording, so all the footage was more or less locked to the portions of each song in which I was on camera singing. Where lip sync was unimportant, the footage was shot without me on camera, with the idea that we would put the sound on the picture in the edit. As the edit days came up, all three of us approached them with some confusion and concern that we had driven into a quagmire and really nothing that would cut together. Certainly nothing that would look continuous as a whole, but we were stuck and had to move forward with what we had and see how far it got us. At least we were having fun. In the edit bay, we were assigned a switcher named Danny White, and to our good fortune, it turned out that he enjoyed doing special tricks with the video switcher and could produce all sorts of electronically generated visuals, colors, feedback, and such with just the switcher and nothing else. It was unusual to discover this talent in Danny because it was unrecognized as a skill in the business at the time. He said he had taught himself to do it by sitting at the video switcher and playing around with it during his off time. Bill was a good cameraman, a competent director, and an even better editor. I had a lot to learn. I sat up in the back of the edit bay and watched as Bill and Danny struggled with the footage we brought in, trying to make some sense of it and get something out of it. From time to time, I would make a comment about what footage might be inserted into the clip, but for the most part, I was just quiet and listening. We quickly ran out of the footage we had shot for Rio, so we started dipping into the silent footage from Navajo Trail. It was our only option. The important thing to me was that the whole video flow with the music and be musical itself, with visual edits made on the beat of the music, so the music drove the images. I would sound off every so often saying to move that picture here or there to match the musical beats and nuances. I was highly sensitive to the song and the music. Bill was highly sensitive to the images and editing. As we worked together, something extraordinary began to unfold. As each new piece of footage, whether a short interlude or a distant shot, whether from Rio or Navajo Trail, was laid against the soundtrack, continuity began to emerge. As the clip grew in length and different footage was added, the continuity became stronger. Danny would season some of the edits with wild transitions, tamed by later standards, but novel for us, and a smoothness and point of view became clearer and clearer as a music video came to life. At a certain point, about halfway through, I can't spot it now or remember exactly where, the song overtook the images and began to provide a narrative structure the images did not have on their own. The whole was more than the sum of its parts. Unknown to me at the time, this shift from pictures driving the narrative to sound driving it was almost unprecedented as a production objective. When the song came fully forward and became the primary intention, the idea of the song, the spiritual value of the song took over and was realized by all the images on the screen. The significance and meaning of the words were expressed on another higher level than had appeared, much as a phantom chord or harmonics become audible on adjacent piano strings. The song gave the images a meaning they didn't otherwise have. It was exciting to me, and apparently to all the other people in the edit facility, because one by one, they all came by, peered in, and stayed, watching this edit process unfold. Bill and I didn't discuss the process at all, but we were both obviously excited by it and getting more intrigued and satisfied with each new edit. By the time the first complete edit was finished, almost all other rooms were empty, and everyone was in our edit bay watching Rio play over and over and over. It was a repetition for me of the Listen to the Band session in Nashville, but here, the video component had shot the whole project skyward at a tremendous rate and revealed a space that had been only partially visible while we were shooting. Bill and I were ecstatic. The loss of shooting days footage and not having done what we first tried to do, and the puzzle of fitting things together, images filmed for 2 different songs, all of it was overtaken by this extraordinary new birth, the music video. None of us had ever seen anything like it. And yet it contains some of the legacy of every film ever made. We had invented nothing, had created nothing, and yet by the action of an artistic process we knew nothing about, we had been present at the birth of something. I couldn't wait to show Rio to the staff at Island Records. Bill flew home to Michigan, showed Rio around to his family and friends. None of us knew what would come next, but we all knew something had started in our presence that was going to propel us for years to come. 361 Orange. So that's what you're in store for, sort of, with Infinite Tuesday. It wanders all over the place. The title comes from the joke of the 2 hippos in the water there, talking to each other. One says to the other, I keep thinking it's Tuesday.
You mentioned about the other two books and the difficulty you had. When you made the decision to actually put Infinite Tuesday together, what actually made you make that decision eventually?
It was encouragement. I just started writing. The book starts off with a lunch that I had with Tim Leary in the 80s outside the studios where we made The Monkees. And in that lunch, I asked Tim Leary if he had a hierarchy to pursuits. And he said, yeah. And I said, how far back does that go? And he said, well, it goes back to me being a kid in high school. And what were they? And he said, well, how do I look? And I thought that was an amazing point of view. And I said, well, did it ever change into anything? He says, yeah. I started thinking, well, what do other people think of me? And it was very candid and it was very forthright. Tim was like that. He was a tough nut. And he was just, flat and direct. But what that showed me was that this was a book that could be about something. So I wrote that, I kept on that track, because everybody I came in contact with had that same set of hierarchies of pursuit. And I would ask him about it. I would say what Tim told me. We would all laugh about what he said because it was funny. But there were other people who would struggle and who would push themselves into this pursuit that was really tough. And I learned from each step like that. And the book unfolded from that standpoint of view. Well, clearly, I didn't. When somebody would say, "Oh, you're writing a book. What's it about?" It's like, and I couldn't explain it. And I thought, I'm not ever going to be able to get this to a publisher. I'm not ever going to do anything. So I just kept on. I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And it was something of a palliative for me, and it was something of just keeping me going. And I sent 3 pages to an agent who I know and who's been a friend over the years. And he wrote back and he said, this is terrific. I can sell this. So I said, have at it, John. And he came back and he said, I've got 12 offers on the table. So you can take the highest offer you want. It was hallelujah. I want the best. I want the best offer. And it turned out to be Penguin Random House. And the editor there, Kevin Doughton, got it instantly. I didn't have to say anything to him about it. He had understood it from How Do I Look? He had understood it from I Keep Thinking It's Tuesday. And the team that he put together to promote it and bring it into gatherings like this were people of like mind. They said, oh yeah, we're on that page. That's the life we lead. So from there it was, covers and something else, but it was like the first time I ever felt like a writer. And the attaboys and the stuff that's come since then have given me great courage going forward. I don't know what I'll write next, if anything, but I'm really happy I wrote that.
As far as I can tell or see, having read it myself now, is that the editors that were, fighting over it at that time, they were all right. They did it. The winning editor at random is a lucky editor. So, questions from the audience? I have this mic that I'm going to hand to you. Here, Ed.
I read the book twice now.
Oh.
I wanted to read it again before today. I just wanted to make a comment about celebrity psychosis. I posted a picture on Facebook the other day of you with the Kinks, and it made me think. I've seen pictures of you with John Lennon and the Beatles, and in 1966 you were this young, unknown actor, unknown songwriter, and within a year or two you're hanging out with the Beatles and every top musician in the world, and there's nobody in this room that wouldn't have CC after that sort of thing. How did you finally get over celebrity psychosis? Or have you ever gotten over it?
Well, first of all, there's no such thing as celebrity psychosis. It's a riff. It's just me doing a riff on something. It happens to be a real thing. Sure. And we all talk about these things ourselves over dinner, but we're really talking about the screwy neighbor who doesn't do this or who does too much of that. The American Psychiatric Institute doesn't say, we found a new one. It's called celebrity psychosis. That's not out there. So because it's just a riff, it tends to not have a lot of traction, first of all. Once you see it, it's like a nervous tick. You can stop it. Somebody says, do you know you do this? And you say, no, I didn't. It's there. You just did it. Oh, I did? Yeah, you just did it again. Oh, you can stop it. And that's what happened to me. I was surrounded by lovely people, very smart women, thank God, and very smart companions and wonderful, talented musicians. And they would say, do you know you're doing that? I said that to John Cash one time. He picked me up in the car and he was doing this, and I said, John, I thought you were off that stuff, that drugs and all those things. He said, yeah, I don't do that anymore. And I said, well, you're sitting there flipping around like a fish on the dock. And he said, do I still do that? I said, yeah, you still do it. And he made a vow to quit. So it's just a very natural unfolding for me. I think it would be for anybody. It requires some self-knowledge, but not much more than that, and that's a box of candies.
You thought I was
Thank you very much. Rancho Deluxe.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
K-I-M-B-E-R-L-Y. I hope you enjoy the weekend and all the festivities. Yeah.